podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Start recording button. Make sure everything starts recording. All right.
Yeah.
Word up. All right. We're just going to go. Peace. This is The Good Brothers. I am Justice Rajee.
I'm Majestic.
And we are back together again. And we are going to discuss Kenya Barris. Sis, it's Barris, right? That's how
Barris, yeah, with an S right and apostrophe.
Gotta put the apostrophe. Yeah. Hashtag or the hash, black as fuck.
I don't know what to call it sometimes.
Black AF. Black AF.
But I do want to say that what's funny, you said it back together again. Just a really quick thing what happens when your brain does a lot of stuff it shouldn't. I think about the Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack song Back Together Again.
Indeed.
And then one that is always it was so fast. Because with Donny Hathaway, he's always used to being like slow songs or like,
right.
This shit's like going everywhere, like it's a Rose Gate song. And so he said, I was like, back together again. Like that sound, really make that, I guess whoever's in the studio, they figured out there was a sound that you could make that reflected, like, I don't know what instrument that is, like,
yeah, that's them, I think that's them Moogs and them,
synthesizers.
All that.
Yeah,
synthesizers, man.
Yeah.
It's like a
right,
sine wave curled over something, and they do something else to it. It's like, like it's a whole lot of science to make that sound work.
Oh, that's actual fact. Yeah, man. My fault. So yeah, we on with the hashtag. So I will say it's been interesting for me to like frame that, like, and I think we'll get into it, but that's even one part of like, okay, so what is this called? Like, is he challenging us to say like black as fuck? Right.
Like
what's the thing here? Right. So it's almost like interesting because it's a title totally made for this generation.
Yeah. In this moment.
In some other ways, it's extremely provocative, but add on. Pardon.
Yeah. So I'll start here because I think I think to talk about this show, you can talk about the show, and then you also can talk about sort of the response to the show. I think like both things had, and I think that honestly, even with the name, is a part of the. I may be reading in, but I think the intent of the creator, is actually to foster this particular conversation or these types of conversation or some of the responses. So I'll just start with this. What did you enjoy most about the show? Like just broadly.
So yeah, we'll just start there before the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny.
Right.
Like, maybe you got to put it in context of like, remember Mr. Bean from the 90s?
Yeah.
And HBO. And so, when Mr. Bean would come on, Mr. Bean would only come on like 6 o'clock in the morning on HBO, right? So you had this like weird English comedy with no laugh track, right?
Yeah.
That would come on at weird times, but me and my homies, we was all like addicted to watching Mr. Bean.
Yeah, well, Mr. Bean was rough though.
Mr. Bean was hilarious, right? So, that was the first time that you just ain't had no laugh track with that in Frank's Place, which is a different conversation for a different day.
Yeah,
but like, you just ain't had no laugh track, right? So you just had to figure out what was funny and what wasn't, right? So anyway, I use that as a context and then evolving to none other than Curb Your Enthusiasm. And like that level of comedy and kind of comedy where you need to figure out if it's funny or not. Or you need to figure out if it's funny, ironic, and a little bit bizarre, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's kind of funny, but you don't laugh, but maybe it's kind of really funny to you, so you do laugh, right? So I think when you have that context of comedy and then watching Black as Fuck, I just think you put it in that kind of generation. One, because he wanted to do it. Two, because it's dystopian as all get out. right?
It is.
Like it is dystopian as all get out, but like yeah. So I thoroughly enjoy it. I've watched it a number of times. I've started over and over again. Like I've watched some episodes multiple times. I thoroughly enjoy it.
No.
I think there's some. I'll just say as we go into it, I think there's some class stuff that is implicit in who enjoys it and who doesn't. There's some like putting yourself in the character stuff about who enjoys it and who doesn't. But I just think it's fundamentally hilarious. What about you? What's your take on it?
So, I mean, I really enjoyed the problematic nature of him as himself in this character. And he was like, I felt like he was, there was one, I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it. There was jokes in there that, the retorts to his kids sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Which is like, I know some people are like, what do you mean? It's like, yo, there's sometimes the stuff you want to say to your kids and you might say it a different way, but you want to say like, yo, man, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? Yo, and you might not be right, but that's what you want to say, right? And then the interactions with like him being in a sense this vehicle or this version of whoever he is as a person who's trying to speak about this, really quite frankly in a sense get close to the place where you could be kind of a socially malcontent black man, but it not be a character study of like how flawed you are as a socially malcontent black man, right? Because we just don't really get to do that. Like and I think he knew he couldn't just do that. So it's like it waxes in it, but then also the reality that for most of us, I think in community to us, you really don't if you have a family and kids and friends and all this stuff, like them people are a fundamental part of your relationship life and how you see yourself. So you can't totally just make this show about you wandering around having misadventures and shit and not have these other people. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like
a dark Mr. Bean. Like a Mr. Bean in Inglewood.
Yeah, I'm saying. Right. And I like that you brought up Mr. Bean because like that was a reference that like watching, like thinking about it again. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's some like, you know what I mean? Like the there's no laugh track, there's no there's these things that they're being jabbed at throughout the show. And it's not always clear that there's one point of view that is considered the right point of view by the way the show works. You know what I'm saying? So I think, and I like that. That's my shit. That if we before we start making what's right or wrong, we gotta get some context.
That's right. That's a me thing. So just one, I think, as always, masterful commentary. One on. Yeah, sometimes your kids piss you off and you would like to use language with them that is different than what people have accepted that the language you would like to use. Indeed. And there's some people who do have the filter to not use the language, and then sometimes you don't. Sometimes, please shut the fuck up. Please. Yeah. I just want you to shut the fuck up. Like, and the thing is, that natural feeling or that feeling is something that you can't say, but there's so many other dysfunctions of parenthood that are deemed redeemable.
Right. And like, oh, you just out here trying to make sure they grow up to be good people. And it's like,
so much other stuff is gonna be like, wait, you said that, you did that to the child, like but that was cool. But me just saying, will you please shut the fuck up? Like that's beyond reproach, right? Hey. Which goes into your second point about socially malcontent Black people are always a case study in the dysfunction of Black people.
Yeah.
This is a unique one that this is a socially malcontent person that is being socially malcontent like white people are being socially malcontent.
Yes.
Right? Like he's carrying baggage, but he's not carrying the baggage of the ghetto and what the ghetto did to him, which is we'll get into that. But like he's not carrying that. He's not carrying that his father was never there. He's not carrying that his mother was never there. Right? And if you go to the barbecue, what's the name? He's not carrying this like I hate my parents.
Right.
He's carrying a social malcontent who's just like, this is how I think. And I think that makes people feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Because we framed it like socially malcontent stuff is the direction of what white supremacy and racism have done to us, but not an individualized, localized. I'm just a little bit fucked up.
Yeah, I'm just this certain shit. I'm a little on. I'm on some other shit about, and I might be, I'm going to be. I am this way, and I'm not actually looking for some redemptive experience to not be this way. I am just trying to make it through these next 24 hours, 34 hours, whatever, as I am. And then, we'll see what happens next week. Like I'm not actually looking for an evaluation of this way that I kind of move through the world and that, the thing like when he's in the first episode, actually, when he's talking about when they get into like the white gaze stuff and NS flexing, and he's talking about his like where one hand when they meet with the other family and basically they go after them when they kind of in a sense disrespect their kids or like oh that's like a little something. It's like, well, wait a minute, wait one fucking minute, like I'm saying, Cardi B, however you feel about her is actually she's an international phenomenon, right?
Right.
And however she got there, I'm not gonna let you act like it's some like her like almost like, look at your little business you got over there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like energy. Like nah, fuck that.
The infamous thing that everyone says to people: you got a little project, or you had a little
project. You got a little thing you going on.
That's the white version. That was the white version. You had a little meeting.
Right, and they bossed up like, nah, man, you ain't gonna bang on that. But then also he's insecure about whether or not he should wear this chain. And at the same time, the chain is sort of like something that he feels is like, yo, this is my swag, this is my style, this is how I get down. Like, I rock chains, and sweatsuits, shit. Like, it's the fuck I do. But at the same time, I'm a little bit self-conscious about it. But also, fuck you if you're gonna try to challenge me about my self-consciousness. Like, I think that's a very complicated set of like things that happen at the same time for someone to be honest about in public. Like we don't typically do that. We typically go, oh, like even what's the character played by the bull that's like they're supposed to be like his man's from back from the neighborhood. Put on, right? Like he gets to go even further out. But in a sense, right, so you could assume the worst about that character, but in reality, like, look, them two understand each other more than anybody else. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he's like, this is my people's, but also, my wife, who's Rashida Jones plays fantastically. I really enjoyed Rashida Jones' character, and her role in this. Like I am in both of these worlds equally.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Which we typically see shows of any nature where we are like, we gotta be like, no, I'm really from this other thing, and I'm not really comfortable in the other one. It's kind of like, no, I'm actually comfortable in both of these at the same time, even though y'all don't like that.
So I want to touch on that. So I want to touch, because I think that is an extremely important part of much of the criticism, which, on my job, I have to go on the internet. So I have to like go on social media. So I have to read some of it. So I've read some of it, and I think much of it is way off base for a lot of different reasons. For a lot of different reasons, I think much of it is way off base. But I think, part of his dialogue and part of the conversation that he kind of projects, in some ways, I just was thinking like, was kind of Kanye Westish before other things kicked in. Right? Like there was a certain amount of kind of genre bending nature to who Kanye West was because Kanye West was, once again, a guy came from a mother and a father, Black Panther background, working class, fell in love with the Delta War, Polo, knew about Chicago gang culture. You know what I mean? Like the complexities of Black folks. We won't put Black folks in these limited trope spaces, right? And I think I ain't trying to mess up your podcast, man, but I think woke culture also tries to, while at some point giving everyone a chance to breathe, also put people in these very clear silos.
Absolutely.
So I think it has, on one level, opened up a lot of different Black folks who have not had a chance to breathe, but it still wants to organize activities.
Yeah.
Right?
It still wants to have but there are clearly delineated groups.
Like zoology, almost. Like there's still taxonomy, right?
Yeah.
There's still not zoology. There's still taxonomy. Zoology, taxonomy, the study of zoology for all the kids listening to figure
Look
out
it
why
up. The internet's your friend.
45-year-old men want to talk about these kind of things late at night. But like this taxonomy of behavior, right? And so one thing, the Kanye West thing took me to another place. Like there's a friend of mine, middle school friend, who's been really cool, and she ended up working for a record label, a really well-known record label, in a time when this record label made a lot of money in California. And years ago, she shared with me that there is a certain group of Black men in LA, right, who have made their money usually through the music industry or the television industry, right? And they have made it in a really challenging environment. And you don't see them because, much of the people who made the record industry and the television industry up until relatively recently, you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And they preferred it like that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes because of nefarious relationships with a whole bunch of other people, right? And you only got to look so far if you really want to find out what that was about, right? So, but when you look at the Black Godfather, right, Clarence Avant and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of Black men in Black families who are like that in LA, right? There's a lot of Black families and Black men who have to function in the industry of music or television who are pro-Black and ornery as all get out, right? And so this is not a made-up reality, and I think that's part of this.
Yeah.
So we'll frame this like this is some sort of made-up thing. No, this is not a made-up thing. And sometimes I think some of us don't have the context to know that this is not a made-up idea.
Yeah.
That there are people who are living like this right now, extremely wealthy, hobnobbing with all the A-listers, right? Think about it. Jay-Z does not throw a brunch. He does not made up his own Easter. I think that was a really good line. Probably the best line on Jay Electronica's album, which is really Jay-Z's album. Homie said he made his own Easter up. Rock Nation brunch, right?
Yeah, he did.
He made his own Easter. He created the hood element of Easter. He created the element Easter in LA. But my point is, how do you do that without having to navigate and negotiate and still having your politics, right? Being pro-Black about everything, because slavery. I hate white people, right? So my man, think about on TV, someone creating a show I hate white people.
Yo, that was that scene. It's like that feeling where you going out doing the performative work of being out in the world, and then you're like you're mad. You know what I'm saying? And you're trying to process that, but then to put that in a show, I don't know. I think some people will think, oh, he's being he's doing that in some disingenuous way, and it's no, he's actually doing that in a way that no one puts that in the shows.
That's my point. But there are people who feel like that. Like I said, if you watch The Black Godfather, Clarence Avant's cantankerous as all get out.
Yeah.
Right? No one ever said Berry Gordy was a pleasure to be around. You know what I mean? These guys are not you know what I mean? They don't do yoga and meditate and breathe. Yeah. These guys are like the other guys. Social, and some of the stuff is even malcontent. Yeah. To your point, that just might be a part of that world. right? And so we don't give that space.
Yeah.
To acknowledge.
And I mean, just quickly while the thoughts on my head is speaking to, because there was a criticism I saw of Rashida Jones, actually being able to be in the show and actually embrace her blackness, right? And people basically calling into question the idea that she really wanted to be black. And I'm like, yo, she's Quincy Jones's fucking daughter, dog.
Yeah,
who's Clarence Avon's homie. So if you watch that, and then your assumption is that her experience working as an actor and not really and always sort of being racially ambiguous was a decision that she made. Like I said, racism, structural racism has a very special type of strange fruit where we feel so comfortable impugning the individual that like someone gave them the offer. Well, look, you can either be defined as your the black side of your family, or we can just cast you as racially ambiguous and just not ever talk about your family on this show. It's like, yo, that's not really a fair criticism of her. That's criticism of the industry that she's had to work in to try to find her own career, independent of who her father is. I'm like,
listen, man.
Some of y'all, come on, man. Like, help me understand what y'all are thinking.
I'm gonna say something that's not intellectually deep before I say something that might be a little more complicated, at least for me right now.
Rock and roll. Go for it.
This idea that the daughter of Quincy Jones, the sister of a young lady that was involved with Tupac Shakur of all people.
Absolutely. Hey. Knew him intimate, like
QD3's sister, right? We're having a conversation on blackness, and we're trying to impugn blackness based on the last time you've seen someone be an actor. Based on your perspective of when they had a role. Did you want her to have an Afro pick? Like, what did you want her to do here? Like, what was she supposed to do again? But this is the whole thing about the woke Olympics. What was she supposed to do to be performative to let you know that she was down with her people? Should she have done Juneteenth? Should she have been at the Black Fest in South Central? Should she have been in Leimert Park? What exactly would have proved to you that she was black enough? Right? And it feels like the stuff going back to some of the 70s stuff. I'll leave that alone. Mm-hmm. The other part I want to say here, though, is that to identify some stuff as like, this is anti-black or this is problematic, assumes that blackness is not fluid. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we make mistakes, and a lot of us have done it. A lot of us do it. But blackness is as fluid as the people who identify as it. Exactly. It's as fluid as the experiences that are changing people. It's as experience as the broader context of what that means. If you want to calcify it and again put it in a taxonomy and then say that's it, and anything that does not relate to that a certain way is problematic, then you can do that. It's one of my challenges of like, even people I disagree with, I don't assume that they're anti-black. They are part of a continuum who may be doing things that are self-defeatist, who may have collective self-defeatist perspectives. They may be unsophisticated, right? I can agree with all of that. But when you get into defining how someone is anti-black, when you get into defining how you want a person to act in this trope, and if they step out of this trope, that they are actually not being black enough. In defining blackness by the roles you've had, because you were in Parks and Rec or The Office. Like, just the idea of that. So it is fascinating to me that we're having this conversation, but not really, because I think part of this is this generational challenge that we're not, I think, talking about. Like, because there is just a response to things, right? And I think Homie's life, I think his framework, his experience, and he's giving you all these varieties on his life. Now, one thing I'll say, the fact that somebody can make 4 shows about their life and get rich off of it,
yeah,
he is real.
He's cold. He's cold piece for that.
Because I can think about if I can make 4 shows about my life and get rich off of it, man.
East Coast Peace.
Just be like, okay, this is Azania's life. This is Messiah's life. This is my life. Let me show you my father. Let me show you. Like, what?
Well,
Here's justice. Like, let me get a show. Everybody get a show.
Hey, I got another idea for you. Hold on, let me tell you. You know what I'm saying? I think there's a piece that I enjoy about the show, just to stay in that moment for a second, of tidbits of, you know, one, the show is an exaggeration, right? There's the self-consciousness and the other stuff are amplified dynamic of, but it was speaking to existing in a space where, although you may have found the place to be normalized within it, you still get the feedback and the feedback and the affect responses that let you know that people are shocked that you're there. I really enjoyed the flight on the vacation when they highlighted the attendant trying to figure out what they do, right? So that they could put it in, you know, the box that they would feel good about. Like, oh well, there's like kids and there's a wife and she's a lawyer and then that they, you know, that the thing that happens with us. In any I'm gonna use this as the word of, like, when you have any kind of functional, what would be perceived as, like, you know, functionally successful, right, in society, that then people are trying to understand, you know, especially people outside the community are trying to, like, contextualize why you're successful, right? And like, oh, so you're like this type of person, or you're that kind of person, or y'all are this kind of couple, or you're not this kind of couple, or what do they do, or you know what I mean? And then most importantly about that it seems that they don't know that, you know, that they are doing that, right? Like that they're like, oh, I'm just being curious, and it's like, no, you're actually trying to make sense of me because I've clearly made you confused. Like,
well, that taxonomy, right?
Yeah.
So because a lot of times white folks have created taxonomies of how do we understand this particular Black person, right? And so just like we talk about taxonomies, how we talk about it, that's what they are doing, but how they engage that, right? But to your point, the great thing about that was just really engaging the fundamentally. You know what? Some Black people are rich as all get out.
Yeah.
and they're not in front of the television, right?
You don't know them.
Like that,
you don't know what they do.
You don't know them.
You don't know what they own. You don't know nothing about them.
And you don't have any context of their experiences, right? Yeah. Because what we have been framed to do, and whenever someone is really wealthy or really powerful and they're not in front of something, then Vanity Fair or any like magazine does long form articles about them, right? Because it's like, wait, it's a Black person that is different, and we don't know nothing about them, and they're not going to tell me the story of growing up in a tenement.
Right.
This is complicating my understanding of the rags to riches story of Black people, right? Because that is the context of what we say, okay, you know what? Really rich Black people got really rich because they were really poor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the overwhelming criticism of the first round of the NFL draft, where they kept basically everybody that came up, it was like, and here's a sad thing that happened in their life. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yo, why are you doing that? As we mentioned in the previous episode, but just to reference back.
No, but I think that's a really, really good point, again, that we have to look at about this idea that he actually takes on a lot of stuff. And he took it on in Blackish a certain way, but he took it on of a, like, less dystopian manner, right?
Yeah, because there's definitely not. This show doesn't actually show that there's any hope for happiness.
Right.
Like, it's kind of like, enjoy the ride, but this shit is going to end poorly.
Yo, he's a Ta-Nehisi Coates of Netflix, right? Like, he is like the person, like, when you read Ta-Nehisi Coates, like, you know, and I was building with somebody about this. I think it was Niles Devine. But like, traditionally, and I want to bring it back, but I don't want to go too far. But traditionally in our community, there is this idea of, like, the milk and honey, like, coming out of Christian kind of eschatology and Christian theology of, like, it's messed up, but it's going to be okay later, right? And a lot of people do that. I don't care if you're talking about like Martin Luther King did it, or Jesse Jackson did it, or Farrakhan did it, right? Like there's this idea that at the end of the rainbow, there's a win. People like Baldwin, even like Manning Marable, right? Like, Shelby. But I'm just saying, like, there are people that's like, I don't know.
I don't know, man. This shit might not get no better. We might have seen the best it's gonna be.
Yeah, like I don't know if this gets better. But Ta-Nehisi Coates is like the new person that kind of like, I don't know. Doesn't look like it'll get any better. We'll see.
Right. The people, right? Like people, the interviewer got in their question, like, so what do you think what can we be hopeful about? It's like, hopeful. My man.
And I think he's the example of like, I don't know if it gets any better. Right? Like, and so, but people aren't used to this idea. They aren't used to like, yo, it started bad, but it got good because I got rich. Maybe this isn't it. Right? And so again, you have to engage in that whole thing of like this lack of joy about everything came together. Mm-hmm. And again, that's something that when we engage that, it's like bad news. It's like Florida Evans saying damn when James died on the pipeline, right?
He's up there doing the oil.
For everybody listening, you go watch the episode of Good Times where she, everybody partying and she's act like she's okay until she says damn and messes up the food and everybody comes out and runs to her, which was a really good part of acting. But to your point, like, no, maybe there's no joy. And guess what? Maybe we split up. Yeah, guess what? Yeah, maybe it doesn't work out like this, right? Like maybe this is the anti-different world, right? Mm-hmm. This is the anti-created identity of Bill Cosby. Clearly was not the reality. Mm-hmm. But like, this is not that. This is, we argue, but we'll whatever the structure, we'll get through it. Yeah. And we're not used to that either, right? Yeah. So he constantly is throwing out these complexities of engagement, which I just think we're not used to engaging with on television, whether it's Tyler Perry, Bill Cosby, you know what I mean? Like, we're just not used to that. Yeah. We're not used to, is there a winner at the end, right? Because at the end of the day, what's love got to do with it? Tina Turner wins. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. She's triumphant in a sense. You know what I'm saying? That she's like, has her independent career and has a second life.
Like a phoenix. Right. Yeah. She's like a phoenix, right? So it's like there's a winner. But with homie stuff, it's kind of like, maybe there is no winner. Maybe some of the kids are kind of better, but kind of not. So we'll just see where it goes.
Well, let's go with this question and then we can pivot back. Because so we started out with something you enjoyed. What's something that, I mean, and this is the way I phrase it, was just what's something that bothered you about the show, or maybe that you didn't enjoy? Or just
see, I don't know, I will attach this to, clearly him and I are not in the same class.
He's doing a lot better than either one.
We're not in the same financial. We're still in the same financial situation, so we're not in the same class. However, I do think there's a part of like, you know what, you are doing the things, and people would perceive you as successful. But here's how you think about your children, or here's how you think about people, and people make you tired, right? And you know what? The idea, and this is real, and I actually don't really talk about this often, but the difference of like, you know how many people don't know who I am when I don't have a suit on? Like, I'm telling you, I could go through this city sometimes and be invisible because I don't have a suit on.
Right.
And so the thing is, when I'm not acting in my role, I am just like everybody, anyone else, any other black dude with locks.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
straight up.
That's just what it is.
Right.
And so, for me, it's not nothing that I didn't like. Sometimes, again, there's a challenge of how dystopian do you want the children to be. Sometimes I wondered, like, where the smallest child was.
I love it.
Like it wasn't as bad as Power. Right. Power was worse with. Power was just like, yo, where the fuck is the kid at, man? Like, but like, I do wonder sometimes, like, where is the other kid?
It's 6 kids, and I ain't seen this little one in a minute, man. Where is he? What is he doing?
Is he with Esmeralda or whatever the Guatemalan or Mexican maid was named? Like, where is he? Right? Like,
Oh,
they
goodness.
because they even gave a level of attention to that, which I think was an interesting complexity, which I think is real. Of like, yes, there's a Central American woman in your household that often runs your household when you're extremely wealthy.
Yeah.
Because no one's doing the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And, but yeah, it was more what I didn't like or the, thorn. It was more just like, okay, I would have liked to know where the child was a little more. I saw him running around when they had the parties and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like that component was just, but that's just television, right?
Yeah.
Because for me,
everybody can't get screen time all the time.
Right. And for me, it wasn't about, I guess the other thing for me, it wasn't about liking it or disliking it. It just was, you know what, this is it. Like, this is it. And this is what you're giving me. And let me take what you're giving me. And I found what you were giving me had a lot to do with the complexities of people, whether it's myself or other people, that I know that have these similar but different challenges. Because the money ain't the challenge. It is the how are you functioning in the broader space, and how are you navigating those things. And yeah, how are you navigating white gaze, right?
Yeah.
And how are you navigating black gaze, right? Which was the famous barbecue episode, right? Like, how do you navigate black gaze? How do you navigate expectations, right? How do you navigate? Okay, you know what? Nephew then did his thing, right? But his nephew keeping it real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, listen, my uncle's always going, you know what I mean? Nephew doing his thing, but is he keeping it real though?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is he buying into the game? Because they've seen the game before. You know what I mean? So for me, I just saw a lot that is relevant, which is also why I think people who didn't like it, I could understand, even though I don't agree.
Yeah.
You don't see yourself in this.
Yeah, and that was sort of, I mean, and bothered was the closest I could get to, the word that I was, whatever the word would be for like the not being praising of the show. I think the idea that like that, because I've read a couple things that kind of implied that there was some lack of writing ability here. You know what I'm saying? In comparison specifically to Curb Your Enthusiasm. And but what I would say before I speak to that piece is I wasn't sure what the loop was going to be to close the show, right? And I was like, I was a little bit like, I'm enjoying this. I'm having a good time. I'm digging certain parts. I'm liking the discomfort. How are they going to close? How are they going to close this off though? Like, you know what I mean? Because it seems like a weird, there's stuff as a person that watches Blackish, there's clearly like pieces lifted from the structure of Blackish and the structure of the character, the protagonist of Blackish and Anthony Anderson's character. But then it was like, okay, I mean, I guess, and then like, just like, I didn't have any, the kids, as much as anyone on TV could be like, yeah, those could be your kids. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't have, I think, I'm sure there's someone that has issues with that. Like, my mind started going to, especially since I didn't finish watching it before I like heard other, got to read other people's opinions, like, oh, it's bland, or it's this, or it's trying to be this other thing, but it's not. And I was just like, hey, well, so some of that sort of clouded my moment to try to enjoy it. And that's why I had to pause so I could like, all right, I need to put some space between what other people are saying so I can just, see it. So I think, there's pieces of it that it's clear that I feel like it was like he's trying to make sure these things get highlighted, even if it's a rough fit. You know what I mean? So, fitting in traveling as a family, fitting in enjoying art and the consumption of art, which I definitely want us to spend some time talking about that.
I know we're gonna wait for that Molly box.
Yeah, we're gonna go in on that. The dynamics with Rashida, with his wife, you know what I'm saying, and what's happening. And then, like subsequently, I didn't know about, his in real time, like life issues, like divorce with his wife and this other shit going on. And then, some of the things that were implying, I don't know if there's some relationship between the two. And I think, anyone that is creating what's going on in your personal life is going to pop up in your creative work, to some degree. But I guess I would say nothing really bothered me about the show, like in a, how could he do that kind of way. But I would say the thing I could see is a fair criticism. The show it does not stay in the I want you to laugh place. It goes into the I want you to laugh, and then it goes into I don't know how I want you to feel about this character. Like I don't actually know, like the at the end, the spoiler alert if you ain't watching, when the last episode when
it's been on too long, you should have watched it. Go
Joya
ahead.
almost drowns, and the boyfriend who he started kind of liking goes and saves her, and he's like, man, fuck that dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that he's this as a person, he's this thin-skinned that every moment he's sort of moving back and forth between like grandiose self-praise and then like, oh, I need to extend and care about other people, and it's like, man, fuck them other people. You know what I mean? It's like it's about me. Like, but there's a part of me that enjoyed seeing, quite frankly, a black male man character do that, like have that, like where you have the privilege and the position to be that way, right? Which is something that we have, but like I said, usually if you put a black male character like that, it's then a morality play that surrounds them, right? That's evaluating,
right.
Evaluating their player and like, how could he be like that? Look how his kids grew up. They hate him. You know what I'm saying? Like the show just can't be fun. You know what I'm saying? Like it can't just be like.
So let me say this. As much as you look at the politics of you and I and men of our ilk and people of our ilk when it comes to the role of civilized men and, you know what I mean? Like being a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was something kind of weirdly like refreshing about somebody not living up to that. There was like because when you deal with the hero archetype and everything that comes with the idea of the hero archetype, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, okay, you know what? There's a challenge with this person, but at the end of the day, they always come through, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the hero archetype. This is men, right? You just had a dude that like did not perform.
He ain't come through at all again.
And listen, but you know what was ill? How like he came through and didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he was, which I think was a setup for a really interesting writing perspective, which we could argue how you understand that and where that makes sense. But it was like I came through when it came. Spoiler alert: when the book is coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm there. I got your back.
Yeah,
I love you. Then it's like I'm about to go get in the water. I don't think you should do that. No, fuck that. I'm about to get in the water. Okay, I'm drowning. Hold on, hold on, man. This shit is expensive.
I got to take all these. My beach cap.
I got this chain on. I got this G-Von sheet on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hold on, dog. I gotta get this shit off. And then the idea of like rising to the occasion so the family is okay. So a part of me was like, you know what? That is fucked up. But like, that's more real than not.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? The guy that just doesn't rise to the occasion. The guy who just doesn't save the day.
Yeah.
The difference and reinforce that no matter what he comes through. There was something to me that, again, not from my own personal perspective, but as far as a television show, right? Yeah. Because again, for black men, it's either you just never can get right, or you're going to be the good, strong black man whose arms is trembling because of, you know what I'm saying, some sort of ailment. But you're going to come through and come get the child. You're going to drive the car when they didn't think you could drive, right? Like, so, I mean, the part of my, and I also didn't, and I don't confuse it for high art other than the ways he's artistic, which is just your lead into the next, to that conversation.
Yeah, so, I think that's in the interest of time, I would like us to tune in. So episode 3, I believe that is, yeah, episode 3. prominently features the work of the artist that you may know, Knowledge Bennett, you the listener, and particularly, I mean, there's a couple pieces that are in the home throughout, but specifically a very recent piece. And I'll double check the name. I want to say it's called Catalyst, but it might be Black Catalyst, which I've seen at least a piece from that work in person. It's in the Smithsonian Joint that's in Tacoma, but it's traveling the country. I don't know where it's going to be right now with the whole COVID piece. However, when it comes to your town, go check it out. But I enjoyed the episode in a sense trying to wrestle with, I mean, everything that's happening there is a whole different economic class of Black people issue. You know what I mean? Of buying, high end art and, prominent pieces and the whole everything that goes along with that. Right. But then also the way, which I think is the running theme through the show of how we move back and forth with how we're perceived and judged and how we deal with how we're perceived and judged and what stuff we feel okay letting go of, what stuff we feel like we got to fight you about. And specifically as it pertains to, especially being successful within this world and this society as it's structured, which to some degree we don't necessarily look upon as a favorable thing always. I think the mean place, at least in some political circles and social circles, would be if you're doing well in a system that has some structural inequities like ours, then to some degree something's wrong with you, or at least there's a damage to your virtue, so to speak. And so he's looking at the art and he can't explain the shit. He likes it, right? But he also feels compelled to like explain it to people. And then other people are like, other people don't like it, they don't understand it, or they think it's just him, flexing his wealth. You know what I'm saying? Like all of this stuff's coming up, which is all really secondary to whether the piece itself is impactful, right? It's like that's a part of it, but that's not really a part of the piece. Like the piece is the piece, but then also like the discussion that happens around art and creative product and who gets the, what stuff is you're allowed to experience, you know what I'm saying, in that way. And then especially like, I mean, I'm gonna keep it a buck. If I got that kind of financial cash flow in my life, like like there might be a fabulous art piece, by an artist whose work I enjoy and love and says something to me, would definitely be on the table, for whatever reason, whether it was just for pure enjoyment or because it is a display of status or whatever. Like it's a messy place, but it was like I just I really enjoyed that. But let me turn to you and give me what your thoughts were.
So, one, I want to start. I'm gonna start specific and then go broad.
Okay.
One, the level of exposure and engagement he gave to our brother, knowledge everlasting, who people know as Knowledge Bennett, was really refreshing.
Yes.
Overdue. I mean, even though the God has been all across the globe doing his art, right? For me, it was a real thing because 5 years ago, I think it was a little 5 years ago, went to Art Basel and saw his presentation at Art Basel. And if you were to think about 5 years ago, where he presented at Art Basel, and he had most of the spots, so he did his thing. You know what I mean? But to think about being in Wynwood, because it wasn't in South Beach, it was in Wynwood. So just to put in context, 5 years ago, and if you know the history, not everyone who listens should go check out his work, but his history and going from even being at Art Basel 4 or 5 years ago to going to Art Basel in Switzerland to Lake Como, you know about that history and art and just all these kind of things. Is amazing, right? And worthy of so much honor. So we want to give peace and shout out to our brother.
Absolutely.
And love to our brother. So start specifically there, the fact that you putting artists on that and giving them that level of platform, even though he has an international platform, it's not like I don't know, we're not like in France or something. It's not like everyone knows about international artists. A lot of times we don't even know about black artists who do anything in America, right?
Absolutely.
So, like, some people know about Kerry James Marshall now, and I think that's just because sometimes they heard that Diddy got a really expensive
piece.
painting in his house, piece in his house, right? Like, not because you've actually looked at Kerry James Marshall and what he does. So, suffice to say, so that's the specific thing that I think was dope about it. But then in a broader sense, I mean, homie had a Hebrew Brantley piano. Like when you look at that, and another thing from a Hebrew Brantley as a fan of his art, largely that I've seen it, interesting enough, in the context of Chicago, going to Chicago and seeing it like on walls or in L stations, subway stations, and then Nevermore, his pop up that he had. Well, obviously it's not up right now, but because the Rona, but like his pop up and the role of Hebrew Brantley's work in chronicling Black Chicago in the Black experience and taking Black children and framing them as cartoons and framing them as heroes, right?
Yeah.
Is just so important. So when you go into his crib and you see, I think he had Kerry James Marshall up, and he got a Hebrew Brantley piano, and he got Knowledge Bennett's work up. It's almost like, while I might not have seen the show as high art, what he was doing with art and Black art and using that space, especially in the same way that I think Bill Cosby in his own way tried to be purposeful about Black art and Black artists, right? I think Kenya Barris is trying to do that, and also expending, this might be for private stock, but just extending also some experiences he had, and then connecting experiences he had with some of the art. I'll just leave it there.
Indeed.
But you know what I mean? I just think the testament to what he was trying to do, and even stuff like supporting, I think he had a marathon shirt on. Like, I just think
it was several things throughout that if you knew what it was, you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, I think he was just being really purposeful about the extension of who Black people are, right? And so while he was grappling with this whole Givenchy and what's the name? Wasn't a Margiela sweatsuit, Valentino sweatsuit, which, I mean, they were amazing sweatsuits.
Yeah.
But like,
things going on, situations.
You know what I mean? Like it were amazing sweatsuits, but it's like at the same time he gave a lot of love and honor to Black art and Black artists and Black clothing designers, which I just think was also, kind of part of his thing. And regardless if you saw it as high art, he was making a point, which goes back to my point of saying about there's a group of Black folks in LA, in Hollywood, who have a focus. And their focus is on using this time to advance these ideas, like having J-Rock, right? Like, okay, J-Rock is a Grammy award-winning artist, but it's like, do you necessarily expect him to be given full front on, the number 6 Netflix show in the country that week versus something else? But like, just that nod to West Coast culture.
Absolutely.
Right, which I thought was really important, because it's like at the end of the day he always grounded himself in like West Coast culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the to add on to that, the sharing, the displaying that the show is not intended, or at least the way it functioned in the first episode was the season rather was letting you wrestle with all these different parts of his life. But there's an understanding, there's the underneath conceit that the stuff that is going on around me and how people see it is important, and I need to be intentional about that, right? So if the art wall, I don't know, if it was just a bunch of nondescript pieces that just look like somebody made, we need a painting for this set. Okay, let's go make a painting. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would have been a different effect. It would have had a different feel. It wouldn't be the same story when you're watching it. Now that some people, maybe they looked and they just saw like fancy stuff, or they saw it just looks like giant pieces of art, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And that's cool. But there's also the reality that as a creator, people have influences, and then they're in a relationship, in a creative relationship with other creative things that are going on. You know what I'm saying? So when, as a person that creates podcasts, I listen to other podcasts. I listen to what people talk about. I listen to a wide variety of podcasts, from ones that are like story based to ones that are basically like the news in a sense, right? To see how and what people are talking about, to understand what, if something is really, if other people are really responding to something, but what can I learn, or how can I be impacted by seeing, listening and being exposed to that. But then also when you, and I'll say this, and I want to say it because I've said it in a post on the internet, because when I've seen that piece, one of the pieces from that collection in person, and I was trying to like take a picture of it to go like, this is dope, and I couldn't really get it because the way it works and in the lighting, you can't really take a good, like, the picture. I mean, they had much better cameras and lighting and everything else, so it looked a lot better for, like, in terms of the impact. But there is something about, and I had the benefit of being able to catch some of Kerry James Marshall's work in person in a couple trips in the last year and a half, and some other people. And there's something when you see certain art pieces in person, even if you've seen a picture on the internet or something else, and especially a lot of work that's out there over the last 10 years, 15 years and longer from Black artists, that it stirs stuff. It gets stuff moving. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, oh, snap. Damn. All right, let me sit with this for a little bit. Now that ain't everybody's, cup of tea, but that's mine. It's a cup of tea I can empathize with. I as a kid who grew up with a mom who going to the museum in Trenton was free. So you can go to the State Museum, see all kinds of stuff. It was a great way to have something fun to do with your kids that was free. So I've seen dinosaur bones to the damn Pippi Longstockings movie 5,000 times, because all of that was free. But it also, it impacted my understanding of the world in a way where I, even if I ain't like all the art that was there, later when I saw art that spoke to me, I feel okay sitting with it and enjoying the view, as far as visual pieces. You know what I mean? Now there's other types of art that's, we can get into that at another date. You know what I'm saying? So I thought that was a nice pivot and something unique and fresh. And again, all praise is due for giving props and sharing, that space and showing some light on our good brother. Because that's important to me. That's important to me personally. Justice is important.
That's right. That's right. That's important to us. Like, what I'm saying, that the God get the respect that he's due. But I think, again, also that's part of, like, and I say this in a good way, he's weaponized his show. Now, you might not like where he aimed his missiles.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just much like Cosby weaponized the Cosby Show.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't think we can't separate that. Like, having the black colleges on, having the black artists on, having Dizzy Gillespie on, was Dizzy Gillespie, Louis Armstrong? That was Dizzy Gillespie. Louis Armstrong was already dead.
Yeah.
But, like, you know what I mean? Like he was weaponizing culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. He was absolutely elevating a certain a perspective, and not feeling like he needed anybody that felt like they couldn't connect with that perspective or felt that perspective was in some way limiting. He was like, well, that's your issue.
Right. Like, and I think that's so important, because you have to do that, because sometimes you can't assume, almost like the black circuit is a little different than what it used to be. And what I mean is, like, again, there's no one set of blackness, but there's a variety of experiences that, depending on where you're at, you have a context. Like, the Penn relays, right?
Mm-hmm.
For black folks, at least from the East Coast down to a certain part in the South, and then obviously Jamaica and everything, the Penn relays every year was a real thing where black folks came together, right, around running.
Yeah.
It's not as big as it used to be, but you and I both know the Penn relays used to be huge.
Absolutely.
And so that cycle, or even some of the black college stuff, is, even though still large, and you have different things in different parts of the country, right? Like, you got the Umoja Fest out your way, out in Seattle with Y King and the Central District, and you know what I mean. Y'all got stuff y'all do in Portland. Y'all got people got stuff they do in Oakland. You know what I'm saying? So you got stuff everywhere, I guess is my point. And so, but the idea of spreading this broader sense of culture, You know what I mean? And taking the responsibility. In fact, you're on TV and you got millions of eyes. And what are you going to say? And what messages are you going to send? It's extremely important.
Yeah.
And so, I just think that was truly a highlight of a show.
Absolutely. So we had just about an hour. There's other stuff we could get into. I think the Tyler Perry piece was really interesting, and I think all the stuff. I mean, the stuff with his family was mad. That episode was very entertaining. The whole also though the arc of the story as they get into the conflict and the challenges within their relationship, I thought was all like some stuff that I could imagine someone watching and not being sure if they're supposed to laugh at some of this. You know what I'm saying? And like, or being a little bit off, like, okay, wait, you know what I mean? Like the ambivalence with the where she got Nia Long's character as her publicist, and she got the other sister whose name I can't remember, but she's a working black actress that's been in a lot of work, working black actor rather, and that even within that triangle, there's a conflict of what is supposed to be what they're all about, even though they're all together, right? Like there's constantly these places where people are being together, but then being somewhat in conflict, but still being together, which I think, I really think that there's a dissonance reality for some folks watching that, because I feel like it might remind them of stuff that happens with themselves. So therefore they can't stay in the fun place of television, because they're like, wait a minute, I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious. Let me, and I might be wrong. I might just be reading stuff, but that's how I feel. And there it is. So you listen to my podcast. So there's that.
Booyah.
Bang, take that. You know what I'm saying? So what's just what's something that you just like a closing thought that you would like to share about, the show or what have you?
I just think, we need to take things as they are and to understand that the new ways of doing art. I mean, sometimes I'm on the flip side of like maybe some hip hop and R&B. Like I don't be getting it, like the emo R&B or the emo hip hop, right? I'm the first to acknowledge I don't get it. I don't want to listen to this, right? However,
indeed,
I'm not going to say that Uzi Vert is not being black.
Indeed.
Or Uzi Vert is being anti-black. It's just a different frame than I am into right now, right? And so in the same way, I just think you take it as it is and take black comedy that is not going for the lowest joke, that is not going for the trope, right? Like take black comedy or black situations that are complex in their very nature, like a black or woman is identifying as black, but that is quote unquote mixed. I mean, those even complicated terms, but like, you know what I mean? Like take that person, but that person can be fully active as a black person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we don't have to identify what side is she on.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
kind of good. So again, I'll leave that alone.
Indeed.
But I just think we should take it for what it is, acknowledge the art, deal with the challenges, but sit with the fact that those challenges are not the challenges of the artist, they're the challenges of our community.
Indeed. So I think my thing I'll close my closing thought was just I mean, this is a podcast that I delve into exploring manhood and particularly black manhood in specific, and so there's autobiographical reality to this, and a sense of I've stated in previous episodes, like public vulnerability as a black man is something that I find I am particularly curious about, and seeing what ways black men show up in public and in creative spaces and other spaces with warts of one kind or another. And I thought that overall, and I'm curious what the second season of this, if there's a second, I'm assuming there's gonna be a second season of some kind. Like, what will be the angle? What will be the structure to keep that exploration going? And I'm very intrigued to see how you try to keep pulling that thread of creating that kind of uncomfortable space. I also found just generally I enjoyed it, and it made me smile, and I'm probably gonna watch the rest of it again, so that I can
absolutely. I'm about to go watch some more now.
You know what I'm saying? And that's that. So Word up. Other than that, I mean, I think that's it. That's a wrap as a show. I say thank you for listening. Appreciate you. This has been The Good Brothers. I'm Justice Rajee.
I'm Majestic.
As always, man, listen, share, subscribe, all the various button clicking things that we ask you to do as it pertains to podcasts. But also, man, take the best part.
And click them buttons, man.
Click them.
Listen. Click them, man. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes I ain't gonna hold you. I be hate listening to podcasts. They be like, please click like. It really helps us understand and helps us people. I be like, man, come on, man. Just give me the content. However,
click the buttons, man.
Click them buttons, man. Out. And we gonna tell people to listen, man. We gonna get a Ash Oldhead Army, Good Brothers Army. Click the button and share it with someone you know that is interested in our brand of dialogue and building a conversation. Peace.
So with that, we're going to say peace one more time.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Thank you for listening to The Good Brothers. Thank you to my brother, I'm Majestic, for joining me again this week. It's been a raucous couple of weeks. I hope that you are enjoying the conversations we're having and what we're adding on. Hope we're bringing something that is relevant, insightful, interesting, something that you want to share. Thank you to my family for being supportive of giving me the space and the time to make this work go. Thank you to our Justice family for doing the same. One love to my nephew. You always could tell when it's it's been about enough time. You know what I'm saying? Nephew need pops. So one love to him. Peace, Messiah. Thank you to all the folks out there managing, working with these circumstances that we're dealing with right now, from the health and public safety side of things. Appreciate you. And to everybody that in the middle of that, to making sure we're getting the things we need, from the basics of food, tools to fix our homes and apartments and whatnot, and all those little things, those spaces that are open, and making it possible for us to take care of ourselves. Thank you. This was something I want to revisit in a future conversation, but much respect to everyone involved in I guess it's Black as Fuck, as it should be called, and or Black AF, or the hashtag Black AF, however you want to slice it. Appreciate you and look forward to more. And I'm going to close what I always try to close with, man. Please, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, rate, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Find the show, sign up for the show, comment on the show. You know what I'm saying? Leave some notes. But most importantly, man, help your auntie who don't know how to work the internet. You know what I mean? Connect with the podcast. Help your uncle who you feel like he would dig what we talking about and he would like what we laying down, man. Help him connect. You know what I'm saying? Because nothing is more important than us helping each other connect in these days and times. So with that, I'm going to say, please find us at Ash Oldhead or at Justice Rajee on just about anything. AshOldhead.com is the website where you will still find most of this content. A little bit behind schedule on a couple pieces, but hey, man, it'll be there. You can always cash app a brother at Justice Rajee with the little money symbol if you want to contribute to the future production of this content. But also check the Ash Oldhead Patreon, which I believe the link is in the show notes, and become a patron. It's a new piece for us that we haven't really started promoting, but become a patron. I would be much appreciative, and I will figure out how to be as responsive to those who want to contribute to the work I'm creating and the vision and what I'm trying to do, and hopefully doing some of this together, because I believe that the redemptive value of what I've tried to start is that I'm not the only one that feels this space needs to be held. So with that, I thank you. I appreciate you. Be safe. Peace.